So I'm Lisa Howarth. I'm the Museum Arts and Heritage Manager based at Clifton Park Museum in Rotherham. Clifton Park Museum tells the story of Rotherham's heritage and history through galleries, through exhibitions and interpretation. And it's here in the Clifton House, which is the home of the Walker family.
Clifton House was built in 1783 for Joshua and Susanna Walker. It was designed by the architect John Carr, who's famous for buildings like Woodhouse and Woodhouse. The Walker family lived in the house for about 100 years until Henry Walker died in the 1860s. In the 1890s, Rotherham Corporation bought the land that the house is on in the house to turn the land into a public park. And then in 1893, they turned the house into a museum, and we've been a museum for 127 years. The Walker family are iron manufacturers. They started their business in the 1740s. Samuel Walker started the business. His son Joshua, who built this house, took over the business in the 1780s, and then in 1798, when they were expanding the business, they leased some land off Earl Fitzwilliam of Wentworth Elsecar, where they built a furnace. They named it after Wentworth's son, Lord Milton, and they had a furnace there for 22 years.
So during lockdown, we've created new temporary exhibition spaces. The first of our exhibition is one called The Museum, the Mansion and the Mine, and it looks at the Wentworth and Elsecar story, but adds in the full Rotherham story with our museum collections and our archives of Rotherham. So the inspiration for the exhibition was Mark Wallinger's Ghost. It's such an internationally renowned piece of artwork, and we're so lucky to have it here at Rotherham on loan to us from the Kirkland collection, because Mark Wallinger is a Turner Prize winner, and it's such a fantastic opportunity for the people of Rotherham to have access to that collection as they walk into the museum. It's the showpiece as soon as you walk in the door, and it's such a fantastic opportunity. So in order to tell the story, we wanted to commission an artist to work with us and work with our team to help tell that story in a different way, bringing in someone with a new perspective that could tell that story and create an artistic installation. So we commissioned Rob Young to work with us, who is a writer, an artist, who could bring in a new perspective for us. And Rob's been fantastic of working with our team to understand the different stories of Clifton Park Museum, Wentworth Woodhouse and Elsecar Heritage Centre, and really think about those horse links between the three sites and bring that together in one installation. That was something that was very different for our audiences, that had that wow factor and that could really spark that imagination.
The exhibition is called The Museum, the Mansion and the Mine, and they're all linked by horses. There's race horses in the mansion, pit ponies down the mine, and all sorts of horses here from circuses that have visited Rotherham. So the horse was a big theme, and I thought, let's investigate that. Let's see if we can get some horses dancing around the walls of the museum. Let's put stories about horses on the floor. Let's make people feel welcome to the world of horses and the world of the history of this town. One of the most famous animal portraits was created in the mansion, Wentworth Woodhouse, and it's called Whistlejacket, picture of a horse. In the museum, Mark Wallinger, again world famous artist, got inspired by Whistlejacket, and he created his own work of art, which looks like an X-ray of the horse with a horn on its head, so he's made it look like a unicorn. So when Rotherham asked me to create a third work of art, I was understandably a bit nervous, because following two world famous artists, it's a lot of pressure. I'm not a world famous artist, I'm a local bloke, originally from the northeast, who now lives around here, and I thought, what can I do? So I thought, I'll do something modest. That's what I'll do, and I'll create a work of art that any child could do with a bit of cardboard and a torch. That's what I've made. It's very humble, it's very modest, and it works. I know it works because when children come in, they look up and think, wow, I could do that. And that's what I've done.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mcleod, the Chief Executive here at Wentworth Woodhouse, the mansion in the story of the museum, the mansion and the mine. Now, Wentworth Woodhouse is a really important part of the Rotherham landscape, but you know, I suspect lots of people are not aware of how it is connected to Clifton House and Elsecar and the stories that run between the three sites and the role that this chap and others like him played in that story.
It was the second Marquess. He was a great patron of the turf, if you like. He was not only a famous statesman and great art collector, he was also a famous equestrian and gambler. He owned several very famous, very successful of his time racehorses. One of the stories associated with the house is that the winnings that he made from his horses paid for the stable block to be built. For a long time, it was the largest stable block in the UK, built by John Carr. It housed 84 horses. He loved his horses so much that he commissioned a new young artist to come here for several months to paint, not his family, not himself, but to paint his pets, in effect, to paint his horses. And he was called George Stubbs. And he did several, maybe up to 20 paintings altogether. And of course, most of them were here. There's one room, it's the Green Dining Room, and there were six George Stubbs hanging on one wall in the Green Dining Room. Maybe the most famous of all George Stubbs's paintings now, that was also here, that was also commissioned by the second Marquess, and of course that is Whistle Jacket. It's life-size. It's an absolutely magnificent painting. If you ever want to study the anatomy of a horse, don't bother buying a real horse, just go to the National Gallery where it now hangs in pride of place. It's very unusual because in its day it would have been considered unfinished, because if you're familiar with the painting, there's no background and there's nobody sat on his back. Normally, of course, there would have been a king, a queen, a general after a famous victory at some battle or other. And there is the suggestion that King George III was to be on his back, and that would have been normal. Stubbs would have painted the horse, then there would have been a background painter, and then there would have been a figure painter. But there's nobody on Whistle Jacket's back. Nobody really knows definitively why, but it is thought that it was done on purpose. There are at least two other George Stubbs, which he did for the second Marquess, of racehorses with exactly that same plain background again. So it did seem to be to accompany the other two pieces at least.
As a complete contrast, Elsecar the Mine had pit ponies, including the one in our exhibition. So you have a beautiful fast horse, a tiny little horse, and Rotherham was full of horses in the markets, in the circus, in the horses that pulled the coal, that built this building, that built Wentworth Woodhouse to create the money. Horses would pull 30 tons of coal. The whole area is pulled by horses, not in a posh way, but in a good working animal.
Elsecar was a model village that was built by the Earl Fitzwilliams of Wentworth Woodhouse. And over time it became an international centre of iron making and coal mining that was designed to impress aristocrats and royalty who were brought here. We had mighty ironworks, one of which, just up there, up on the hill, was built by the Walker brothers of Clifton Park over in Rotherham. So famous Georgian painter George Stubbs painted the magnificent Whistle Jacket when he came here to South Yorkshire. But few people know that he came here to Elsecar as well, and here he painted his only industrial scene of a pony working the engine at the Elsecar Old Colliery back in the 1760s. Horses and ponies really did drive this place forward. They really were the power behind Elsecar in many respects. At the ironworks, they were pulling massive bridges down to the canal that was sent around the world. Over at our collieries, before the ages of steam engines, they were winding the engines, and not least, they were underground. Dozens of them, hundreds of them, pulling tubs of coal back to the shafts, and there was a very, very special bond between the miners and those ponies as well. Many miners remember their first job, often when they were just teenagers, was as pit pony lads, working those pit ponies, and they had nicknames for all of them. And there's many very special examples of that real bond between Elsecar miners and those ponies that continued right into the 20th century.
Hi, my name's Steve Hardy, and my granddad was John Willie Bell. We both worked at Elsecar Pit, which is just on about half a mile down the road here. And when my granddad was about 16, 17 years old, his job was leading a pony, and by that they used to take supplies in and bring coal out in tubs. The ponies were very intelligent, and the pony could count. So if you hung one tub too many on, either to take it in by or bring it out by, the pony would count. So say it should take 3 tubs. If it heard 4 clicks, I've got too much on here, I'm not moving. So you had to take a tub off, and then he'd set off and pull it. One particular day, my granddad would be about 16, 17 year old, and when weight comes on and you can tell that there's going to be a fall, roof starts breaking up and bits of rock start, well they call it muck, start dropping down and timbers start creaking, and all men ran out by to escape. Like my granddad's pony was still in by, so my granddad ran in by and stayed with his pony. So the men then had to dig my granddad out, and when they got him out, and I don't know if it was deputy or under manager or manager, said, Bill, why did you run back in? Why didn't you run out with us? He says, I knew you'd rescue a man, I knew you'd dig a man out, you wouldn't dig a pony out. And then from that, Earl Fitzwilliam presented my granddad with this pit pony medal that's on display at Clifton Park Museum.
At one time there were 70,000 pit ponies under the ground in England, which I found amazing. 70,000 little horses under England's fields. To honour those little working horses, I created an exhibition and I told their stories.
So I really hope that our visitors come away with seeing the exhibition and having that wow factor of something unexpected and something very different, and a real understanding of some of the fantastic stories that we have locally and how we can tell them in a slightly different way to really gauge people's imagination and get them to really kind of be inspired by the local heritage of Rotherham and wider South Yorkshire.